Meet Paul, the most unremarkable magician in the land of Murrelwood. Life was good in Murrelwood, peaceful, sitting around, drinking goat's milk. But then an evil wizard named Abaddon conquered Murrelwood and defeated all of the other powerful magicians in the land. Now Paul is going to have to show the world he's more than mediocre. The name of the game is Magician. Find out all about it on this edition of Friday Night Arcade. Magician was developed by Eurocom and released by Taxon in 1990 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Magician is, for all intents and purposes, an action RPG, but it's definitely one of the more unique titles for the NES. For starters, despite being an RPG, you basically just go to the right. It's a little bit like Simon's Quest, but even more simplified. There's no overworld or exploring in that sense. Sometimes you have to backtrack a bit to the left to check out a shop or unlock a clue, but in general, you're just going forward. It's got all the things you'd expect from a basic RPG. You can talk to folks, enter shops, buy potions, items, and spells, and equip them on your character, but it's all just a bit different. For starters, your character has a hunger and thirst meter that runs down constantly, even if you're just standing in place. That's right, it's a survival RPG. It runs down fast, too. If you stand in place for too long, Paul starves to death and it's game over. Oh, come on, Paul. It's only been like 8 minutes. So at all times, you need to be aware of your hunger and thirst. I spent about an hour exploring the first town, and half that time was just spent backtracking to the shop to replenish my food and water stores. Paul can also buy spells, although this system is totally different. In order to explain that, I'll need to explain the inventory system. For the most part, this is straightforward. You've got your character stats here in the middle. The box at the top is what you're holding in your hand. The second box is the spell you presently have equipped. Pressing B uses whatever you have equipped in your hands, food, water, an item, whatever. Pressing A uses whatever spell you have equipped. That's another thing. There's no jump button. When I first played the game, I was just running around and checking out the controls, and I accidentally used up all my water and had to restart. But anyway, so you've got your spells, and now here's this box in the middle with all of these symbols. It turns out you can manually enter your own spells without buying them if you know the symbols to enter. In fact, Nintendo Power even encourages you to cheat the system. Anytime you enter a town, just save your game, buy all the spells, write down or take a picture of the symbols that make up the spells you bought, then reload the game and manually enter them in your spellbook for free. Then save your money for food, water, and potions. Hey, it works, and you can technically just start the game with every spell if you know the symbols, but it's a little tedious going through the process of buying, reloading, and entering all of these, especially since there's over 30 spells in the game. Why not just have enough currency available throughout the game to buy what you need? Sometimes the townsfolk will give you gold, or you'll find some from exploration, but it's just not enough. You can also experiment and just try to make up your own spell by entering in random symbols, but you'll probably just end up killing yourself. That's all just the tip of the iceberg though. This game has some issues that make everything more frustrating than it needs to be. So basically you just go around each area, exploring, talking to folks, solving puzzles, occasionally defeating enemies. When you're done exploring an area, you can proceed forward to the next area, but that's just it. Unless you've got your handy Nintendo Power to tell you what all spells you should have before you leave an area, it's possible to get stuck later in the game if you're missing a specific spell or item. Once you leave an area, you can't go back. So although technically it's possible to leave this first town, if I haven't collected all of the spells or the right items such as the sunglasses, I'll have to restart. The game does have a save function built in, but you have a limited amount of saves that you can use. And with the hunger and thirst meter always running in the background, it's tempting to want to save your game as often as you can. There's a finite amount of currency and items in the game, so you want to maximize your food and water reserves as best as possible, but the game does nothing to help you out in that department. Heck, you could starve to death just trying to talk to folks in a town. They walk the same speed as you and don't slow down. Chasing down everybody is a chore. Hey, come back! You basically have to wait for them to turn around toward you and then hit the talk button at the exact moment they intersect with your character. Defeating enemies is a bit of an ordeal too. It's not always clear what spell will inflict damage. You've got several offensive spells such as Axe, Fireball, Lightning, and so forth, but it seems like only 1 or 2 spells may actually work against a foe. You'll know a spell works if the enemy flashes gray, but otherwise it just bounces off of them. So you have to fire a shot, see if it works, then go into your inventory screen and cycle through to the next one until you find one that does work. Meanwhile, they're relentlessly pelting you with damage, and the whole time you're probably on the verge of starvation. And if you do find a spell that works, it will probably still take a million shots to defeat the bad guy. You can select the level of damage that you want the spell to do. Instead of spells just getting more powerful over time as your character progresses, you can just pick from 1 being the weakest or 4 being the most powerful. But you don't just want to always use the highest level because that will drain your mana too fast. Everything about this game is a constant balancing act. To further add insult to injury, not only is managing your food and water rations a constant battle, you can only carry up to 3 of each item. If you're at a store, it simply won't let you purchase more if you already have the max. You have to leave the store, consume the food, then go back in and buy more of it. So you're constantly budgeting time spent walking versus consuming food and water, and anytime you find a shop that sells it, you're going to want to stand outside and top off everything, then go back inside and restock your inventory. In the first town, they put the food shop near the start. After I was confident I'd found everything and was ready to proceed to the next area, I backtracked to the shop to top off my rations one last time before headed to the wilderness. Then my hunger and thirst were reduced by a large percentage just walking back to the end of town. Paul really needs to learn a metabolism spell. And later in the game you start finding treasure chests that contain food, but if you're already carrying the max of that particular item, you're out of luck. For example, here I was already carrying 3 pieces of bread, and when I opened up the chest, there was bread inside. There's no option to just eat the food while you're examining the treasure chest either. So okay, maybe I can just leave the treasure chest, eat the food to make room, then go back in and explore it? Nope. As soon as you leave the treasure chest screen, the chest disappears. Okay. A little later, I defeated a boss and a treasure chest appears. Alright, this time I'll be ready and just eat some food ahead of time. Nope. The treasure chest disappeared before I could even get to it, and my Lightfoot spell wore off, so I sunk in the marsh and died anyway. Aw, come on, what the crap, Paul? I really wanted to like this game. Story time, kids. Back in 1991, when 10-year-old me subscribed to Nintendo Power, Magician was featured heavily in the first issue I ever received in the mail. I remember reading all about it, looking at the screenshots and thinking, this must be an epic adventure. But I was at that age where your game library is pretty much relegated to whatever game your family bought for you for Christmases or birthdays, or whatever they had to rent at the local video store. So 27 years later, I was really excited about finally getting to try this one out for the first time. I feel like there's potential here. I like the graphic design and I love the music. It's one of the best original scores on the NES. Unfortunately, I just didn't have the patience to finish this one. If someone wants to make a ROM hack to slow down the hunger and thirst meter, add in a little more currency so you don't have to mess with entering all the spells, slow down the NPCs in town, remove or at least raise the max amount of items you can carry, and do away with disappearing treasure chests, well, then you've got yourself a pretty awesome little NES RPG. I don't know, what do you think? Did you play this one growing up, or perhaps discover it recently? Am I being too harsh? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.